It happened at 2:14 in the morning. No warning, no buildup, just 6 words under an old photo that almost nobody was supposed to see. Almost. The Grammys had just wrapped up. Gwen Stefani was everywhere. Headlines were still rolling in, clips were looping, fashion breakdowns were flooding timelines. And while the internet was busy celebrating one of the biggest nights of her career, Blake Shelton's sister quietly posted something that changed the entire mood. Then, Blake's mom liked it. No comment, no emoji, just a like. And in that single tap, fans felt something shift. Because when silence breaks in a family like this, it's never random. It's intentional, even when nothing is said out loud. People immediately started asking the question no one had wanted to ask before. Was this just nostalgia, or was this the beginning of something much deeper? To understand why this moment hits so hard, you have to understand who Andy Shelton is. Andy isn't famous. She doesn't walk red carpets. She doesn't do interviews or post cryptic messages for attention. She's Oklahoma through and through. Private, grounded. The kind of person who posts maybe once or twice a year, if that. And when she does, it's usually something simple, a quiet moment, a family memory, something that matters to her, not something designed to perform. That's exactly why this post felt different. When someone who never speaks suddenly decides to say something, people listen. And when that silence breaks at the exact moment your brother's wife is dominating global headlines, it stops feeling like a coincidence. It starts feeling like a message wrapped in restraint. The photo Andy shared wasn't polished, no filter, no glam. It looked like it belonged to a completely different time. A version of life before spotlights, before branding, before everything had to be curated. And under that photo were just 6 words. She didn't mention Gwen, she didn't explain herself, she didn't accuse or defend anyone. But longtime followers recognized those words instantly. They'd seen them before, tied to older posts, tied to home, tied to a version of Blake that doesn't really show up on TV anymore. That's when the contrast became impossible to ignore. On one screen, Gwen Stefani was trending worldwide. Designers were being credited, interviews replayed, applause everywhere. On the other screen, Andy's post sat quietly, almost stubborn in how ordinary it looked. No spectacle, no performance, just meaning, sitting there like it didn't care who noticed. And the timing mattered. This wasn't during the Grammys. It came after, when the noise had started to die down, when only the people paying close attention would catch it. That didn't feel accidental. And fans didn't stop there. They started noticing other small movements. Andy was liking old photos, not recent ones. Old ones. Years-old posts that had been untouched since Blake's divorce from Miranda Lambert. No captions, no comments, just likes, one after another. Quiet enough to miss if you weren't watching, but people were watching. Screenshots started spreading before anything could be undone. Then came the unfollowing. Accounts quietly disappearing from each other's lists. No announcements, no dramatic statements, just digital doors closing one by one. And through all of it, Andy never said another word. Somehow that made everything louder. Because this was never about a dress or an award. It wasn't about a red carpet moment. It was about 2 completely different worlds trying to exist inside the same family. One built on stages, spotlights, and constant reinvention. The other built on porches, Sunday dinners, and staying exactly who you've always been. And somewhere in the middle stood Blake Shelton, pulled in 2 directions, whether he wanted to admit it or not. People close to the family have said Andy didn't post to embarrass anyone. That wasn't the goal. What hurt wasn't the Grammys or the attention Gwen was getting. It was the distance. That slow realization that someone you grew up with is becoming someone you don't fully recognize anymore. That kind of loss doesn't happen all at once. It happens in small moments, missed phone calls, shorter visits, conversations that start feeling rehearsed instead of real. Later that night, away from the comments and speculation, Andy reportedly spoke to Blake privately, not to fight, not to issue an ultimatum, just to say something simple. She told him she missed him, not the celebrity version, not the Blake that belongs to everyone else, the one who still felt like home, the one who didn't seem like he had to choose between who he was and who he's become. And that's where this story really shifts, because this wasn't a sister turning her back on her brother. This was a sister reaching out the only way she knew how, choosing meaning over noise, memory over spectacle, roots over whatever Hollywood demands from people. And just when it seemed like the moment had said everything it needed to say, something else happened that sealed it completely. Dorothy Shelton liked the post, Blake's mom. No comment, no emoji, just one single like. And if you know anything about families like this, you know that wasn't casual. Mothers don't insert themselves into public moments for no reason, especially not in quiet, grounded families like the Sheltons. That like wasn't just scrolling and tapping. It was a statement, a quiet nod that said everything without saying anything at all. At that point, this wasn't really about Gwen anymore. It was about something bigger. What happens when the people who raised you stop staying quiet? What does it mean when your own mother publicly agrees with something that seems to question the life you're living? Is that judgment, or is that love trying to pull you back before you drift too far? What made this whole moment so unsettling wasn't the drama, it was the restraint. We live in a world where everything explodes instantly. People post receipts, go live, air out every problem in public. Andy did none of that. She chose stillness, and stillness makes people uncomfortable because it forces them to listen instead of react. Those 6 words didn't chase attention. Attention chased them anyway. Fans replayed them over and over, compared them to captions from years ago, traced their meaning through old family posts, trying to figure out exactly when things started changing. Because this wasn't the first time Andy had hinted at distance, it was just the first time the timing made it impossible to ignore. Then people noticed something else that night. Blake didn't post anything after the Grammys. No congratulations, no backstage photo, not even a quick story that disappeared after 24 hours. For someone who usually shares everything, that absence felt heavy. This didn't feel like being busy. It felt like a pause, a hesitation, maybe even the same tension Andy was quietly acknowledging without naming directly. You don't go from oversharing to complete silence unless something inside you is stuck. Fans picked up on that immediately. Audiences always do. They can tell when someone is performing versus when they're actually present. And that night, Blake wasn't present anywhere. Then there was Dorothy's like again. A mother watching from Oklahoma while her son's wife trended worldwide. A mother seeing her daughter post something pointed. A mother choosing to publicly agree without adding a single word of her own. Nothing about that was accidental. And what made this moment linger wasn't what happened next, but what didn't. No statements were released, no interviews were scheduled, no public fallout unfolded. Just a series of quiet choices that together told a complete story. Andy chose to post. Blake chose silence. Dorothy chose agreement without explanation. Gwen continued forward, seemingly untouched by the tension swirling around her. Some people rushed to frame this as sides being picked, family versus wife, Oklahoma versus Hollywood. But that misses the point entirely. This wasn't about exclusion, it was about identity, about what happens when love doesn't look like applause. Sometimes love looks like reminding someone where they came from, even when it risks being misunderstood. Fans started drawing parallels to other artists who've talked openly about fame pulling them from themselves. Kelly Clarkson has spoken about that slow identity shift, the moment you barely recognize yourself anymore. And that's what many believe Andy was really worried about. Not that Blake married the wrong person, but that the life he married into might slowly erase the person she grew up with. The brother who used to call just because he felt like talking. The uncle who showed up without cameras. The son who came home and actually felt like home. Fame does strange things to relationships, not just romantic ones, but family ones too. It creates distance without anyone moving. It builds walls without anyone laying bricks. One day you're just a guy from Oklahoma with a guitar and a dream. The next day you're a brand, handlers, schedules, a public image that needs constant maintenance. Somewhere in that transition, the phone calls get shorter, the visits feel different, the inside jokes stop landing the same way. That's the grief Andy was expressing. Not anger at Gwen specifically, grief for a version of Blake that feels further away every year. And fans noticed another layer to all of this. The Miranda-era photos Andy was liking, not random nostalgia, specific moments from a time when everything felt more aligned, less polished, less performative. Was that preference, or was it just longing for simplicity? Probably the second. From Andy's perspective, imagine watching your little brother become famous, then watching him fall in love with someone even more famous. Suddenly, his entire life exists on a planet you don't recognize. The places he goes, the people he's surrounded by, the version of himself he presents to the world. Visit by visit, call by call, you realize you're losing him. Not to something bad, but to something so different it might as well be another universe. Another red carpet will happen next month. Another headline will demand attention. But inside the Shelton family, this moment doesn't disappear. It settles in. It reshapes conversations. It lingers in pauses that didn't used to exist. Because once silence breaks, it can't be unbroken. And that final question keeps echoing. When the women who raised you and grew up with you stop staying quiet, what are they really trying to say? Are they judging who you've become, or are they loving you enough to hope you'll find your way back? Most people miss this part. It's easy to pick sides, but families don't work like that. You can love someone completely and still feel like you're slowly losing them. You can support someone's choices and still grieve who they used to be. Andy's post wasn't an attack. It was more like an SOS wrapped in nostalgia, a message meant for one person, not the internet. Blake. And the hardest part is that the answer won't show up in headlines. It'll show up in phone calls getting longer or shorter, visits feeling warmer or distant, those moments that either bridge the gap or make